an Islamic, democratic socialist, just was elected mayor of New York City, the same New York City that endured the 9/11 attacks, allegedly from Muslim extremists. And also, New York City is a financial hub for the free world. The Western world fears socialism and communism. What could go wrong? Welcome to a psychic forecast on events that could shape the trajectory of the world for the months and years to follow. Will what's going on in New York spark a national or even a global revolution? I'm going to dive into that, dig my heels into that in just a moment. I'm also going to talk about later on some stuff that's going on with solar weather, earthquake news, a little bit more news about Donald Trump. But let's dive into the main show. And that is that Zohran, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Zohran Mamdani was just elected mayor of New York City. Now, to be fair, he was raised in both the Islam and Hindu religions, according to my understanding, or multi-religious schools of thought. So whether he considers himself Islamic or not, I'm not really sure, to be honest, but that's the narrative. And like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of fear and trepidation around that faith, which of course shouldn't be, in my estimation. Like, in other words, a couple of bad apples shouldn't spoil the whole bunch, but it is what it is. So that's really what's going on. So I wanted to set the table first and then give you my psychic forecast on how I think things will play out. And firstly, no, I don't see a full-on revolutionary war, to be clear. Revolutionary activities, yes, and we explained that in the November psychic forecast, in the autumn psychic forecast, and psychic forecast earlier in 2025, and it's certainly validating. It's certainly going in that direction. Plus, let's see. Plus, I see it as part of a distraction, and I want to dive into that. That maybe that what's going on in Manhattan, New York City, is a distraction that's covering up some wider scale activities going on around the world. So firstly, I don't care about a politician's religious affiliate. I just care that they can do the job. To be quite frank, I don't necessarily vote on party lines. I vote on who I feel is the best candidate for the job. So I wanted to make that clear. This is a psychic forecast. It's not a political statement or a rant. So I want to be clear about that. Also, yes, I have opinions on politics and what's going on in the world, but I'm drawing from spirit, so I put all that aside and give you information as I receive it through as clear a vessel as I can possibly create. So let's see, what else do we have? I'm moving right along here. Fears run rampant against socialism and communism for over 70 years now. So we have a democratic socialism. Different people define that differently. I'm not here to define that for you. That's just the label, and that's the perception that we're dealing with. So this really could not have been scripted better if you wanted to create a major distraction to hide operations going on in the country, in the world, that you don't want the public to see. So let me dive into that. If they wanted to deepen the divide and further weaken the masses through creating more fear and anger, well, here you go. Can we believe that both parties, this is the Republicans and the Democrats, couldn't come up with a candidate that could beat somebody who's openly a socialist and Islamic, based on the fears and prejudices in the country, in the city, and in the world? And what did we have? We had a candidate who was dismissed or resigned from office of governor of New York amidst scandals. And then on the Republican side, we have Curtis Lewa, who is not a politician. He never served in any office. He's a radio show host and founder of the Guardian Angels. Yet he's a guy that put his life on the line for New York City, so give him kudos for that. But with these really strong candidates that could win, if I apply both critical thinking to the situation as well as intuition, I would say that it was planned, that it was orchestrated. I would go a step further and say that much of what we see in politics, world rule, and all that kind of stuff is orchestrated in order to seize greater control over the masses and populace at the benefit of a minute few, at the detriment of a great many. And I could go on and cite examples, but I want to cut to the chase and dive deeper into what I feel is going to happen. First thing is, we're going to get some standoffs between Washington and New York City. That's already starting to happen. That Donald Trump and Mondami are going to clash. It's already happening. They have very, very different ideals. Trump endorsed Cuomo, and it's going to spark off some fireworks. I have more to talk about Donald Trump in a minute, but hold that thought for a second. I had a vision recently where I saw the number 87, and I saw a bunch of people being rounded up, being arrested. Some of them were on the ground, basically. Now, it's been a long time. I haven't even been in New York City for close to a decade. I'm from Manhattan. I believe Gracie Mansion's on 87th Street or 88th Street. It's on the East River. So I could be seeing the potential for some demonstrations turning violent. Now, again, do we need to be psychic to understand that potential exists? Probably not, but being that I got a clear vision of that, and they showed me people being arrested, but then released later on. So there was that. Now, what else? I have to dive into my notes. I was being shown a possible assassination attempt, and I hate to even put that out there because basically I don't want to put any negative energy into the collective. I do believe in predictive programming, so understand that predictions are just points of references showing, based on what's going on in the now, what may happen in the future. So we want to change the energy of the now. And whether we love or hate our political leaders, I'm sure people that come to this and other spiritual channels don't want to see any violence, right? So I don't think that was Mondami with the attempt. It could be an assembly person or somebody around him, but definitely some issues of violence are possible. It's on the table, and demonstrations breaking out in the city. Clashes with the federal agents, with ICE agents. So yeah, we could see the military in New York City. We talked about the military coming into various large cities in the U.S. for cracking down on corruption and things like that through and by the current administration in Washington, right? So let's see what else. Washington blocking efforts for social reforms, while the city is looking to protect the immigrants. So there's a lot of clashing of ideals. Threatens to cut funding to the city comes up. That may have already happened. I'm not up on the news, so if it has, I apologize. Municipal workers walking out, maybe some bus drivers, civil servants. These are ideas that came up when I was asking Spirit to project what could happen in New York City in the future. Supply lines to the city interrupted, threats to the wealthy relocating, stuff like that. I was also seeing trash piling up, which could be symbolic, but there could even be a garbage strike. So there could be walkouts as part of mass protests against what's going on in the city. And truth be told, this mayor may wind up doing a fine job given a chance, but certainly a lot of his ideas are controversial. What he wants to do with the economy, with housing, and various socialist ideas that may not fly with the general public. And there's more, but you get the idea. And interestingly, and this is worth noting, that when I did my November and October psychic forecast, I really didn't get anything about the New York elections, as my focus was more on what was going on in the national, politics, world politics, geology and stuff like that. But certainly the events in New York City are going to shape what's going on in at least in national politics. So that's interesting to note. But now that it's happened, now I'm starting to get more information about it. But I did pick up on a big upticks of revolutionary and civil revolutionary activities in general. especially in the big cities, including New York, Chicago, LA, stuff like that. And what we're witnessing basically is the collapse of the old system. Our old collective karma is playing out, evolution is playing out. And again, I'm being made aware of the potential for lots of demonstrations and protests that could turn violent. And for this activity spilling into other major cities besides New York, an increasing clash between different political and social ideals, hate crimes on the rise. And of course, let's just pray and send really positive, loving intention into the collective so that we don't have violence in schools or churches or places where people worship or anywhere for that matter. But this is the trend that I'm seeing, to be honest. But I'm also seeing a big wave of exposure of corruption in politics, maybe New York politics, national politics, world politics, voter manipulation, things like that coming to the surface. I also had a vision of something really heinous being discovered in New York, but exposed. It could be some offshoots of the Epstein list or human trafficking or things of that nature. And like I said, generally, a lot of exposure of corruption is happening. And yeah, I also get the sense that this is likely to escalate. Clashes between New York City, Mamdani, and others in the city, and Washington, and so forth and so on, building. But then early in 2026, it feels like it's going to ease up. I don't think anybody's, at least in New York's going to step down, but changes in Washington, changes in the U.S. presidency and stuff like that, early 2026 could have a bearing on how that goes. So let me see, what else did we write? Change in Washington can help ease some tensions. Changes in Washington. Also likely an important figure close to Mandami leaves office unexpectedly, sparking off more controversy and speculation. So it's very, very speculative. And the results are more tensions in New York City. Growing numbers of homeless people I'm seeing, population concerns, changes in the housing market, some services cut or delayed, big pushbacks against the mayor, clashes with very supportive, pro-Mamdani, very vocal pro-Mamdani people. Where else do we see this in the country playing out, where the two ideals are just clashing? So what's happening in Washington, to some degree, is happening in New York. A lot of people are going to want to leave the city. We're already seeing that. And every time there's a crisis, people leave New York City, drive housing prices up. So I even saw military with guns. There could be some level of martial law. If that happens, it'll be very temporary. But keep an eye on that potential in New York and other parts of the country. Though I don't think it's anything that's going to be long lived. I want to say so. I think it's going to end pretty quickly. So the New York area, I could also get being hit with a lot of storms this winter, a lot of winter storms and difficult weather, as New York has grown unaccustomed to what we would call real winters. Those of us that are a little older. So anyway, the solution here is for more prayer, to send lots of love into the collective, to send intention for people to work together in order to solve some of the differences, and understanding that united we're strong, divided we're easily conquered. November was slated to be a very revolutionary month. If you watch the November psychic forecast, lots of changes, falling of the old. Also, on that note, watch out for more solar storms. I'm filming this on the 10th of November, right after we had an X 1.2 class flare. I'm hoping this will be up on the 11th. It may be up on the 12th, depending on other things. And then there was a 1.7 the day before, and I feel like there's a bigger flare coming. In fact, it may have hit by the time this video is uploaded on the 11th or the 12th. And if that's the case, I did a post right before I did this video on the community tab explaining my belief that there could be an X4 and X5 class flare within 72 hours of that post. So that would be within 24 to 48 hours if it hasn't already happened. But in general, we predicted that for November. Let's see what else. Energies and destabilizations in geology and weather as forecasted. We've got the third major cyclone in a month. This being a typhoon that hit, the second one that hit the Philippines. We see solar activity very high, atmospheric energies very high. We have to watch earthquake activity. Japan, the area with where the big 9.1 hit 14 years ago, is there's a lot of activity that could be a foreshock sequence. It could be. So there's a lot of activity there. That area and Comanche Peninsula, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, are real hotbeds that within days, if not, it could be weeks or a month or two, there could be a major, at least a 7.5 and not an 8 plus. Also watch California around the San Andreas. I feel like that's going to heat up around Drake's Passage, and there's other areas that I mentioned in the longer forecast. Long and the short is, as the solar activity increases, it adds energy to the earth, to the atmosphere, and it ramps up. So if there's any fault lines that are on the brink of an earthquake, this extra energy is going to catalyze that. So we may see a really, really active month. So back into my notes, solar activity is high, may let up for a minute. So I think one or two major flares in the next 72 hours or so from when I'm filming this, for the next 24 or 48 hours. But then around the 20th, it's likely to pick up again. So we may get a little bit of a respite. I'm going to do another video, probably launch it on Saturday, about the 20th. That's the new moon. There's a lot of energy. Probably there's going to be another wave of solar activity, geological activity. And these solar flares also affect consciousness. They add energy not only to the earth and to the atmosphere, but into the collective fields also. It's an awakening. So it's adding new ascension codes, basically, new information that our DNA, it helps our DNA to activate, our consciousness awakens, it helps the earth awaken. It catalyzes these types of clashes because for things in order to change, that has to happen, but it's coming because of higher energies, higher consciousness affecting the fields. So whatever clashes happen, it's going to lead into peace, and it's going to lead into elevation and better times ahead. So keep the prayers, keep the energies high. So also, solar activity, let me see, could be more significant event. Some communication outages possible as we'd forecasted. So satellite interferences. But again, I don't feel the worst case scenario, but as I had done a separate video about a week ago to watch out for this period for power outages or communication outages. So let's see what else. Going to Donald Trump, we had forecasted a very rough month in November. It's actually playing out. A lot of pressure against him. Possible event later in the month to be aware of. An event that those that are assigned to protect Donald Trump need to be on their toes. I don't think any harm's going to come to him, but something to be aware of. But I do feel like something changes, maybe towards Thanksgiving or a little bit later, where he may be invisible again for a while. There may be a health thing that comes up. And we have to watch early 2026 because there could be changes in the U.S. presidency. I'll link a video in the end screen where I talk a little bit more about that and what I see happening around that time. But in any event, one or two more airplane crashes could come up. And all are a reflection of the upgrades in consciousness, all the chaos and clashing, like I said before, but it's in my notes, I'm saying it again. Clashes of ideals results in the old falling, leading to opportunity to rebuild society on a stronger foundation of love and power back to the people and spiritual evolution and so forth. And vision and predictions are not to scare, but to help you to understand the chaos in our world is a reflection of consciousness. And the more we understand where things may be going, the more we can work individually as well as collectively together in order to create a better future and to help to ease any suffering or any cataclysms or negate them altogether, and to change to change the patterns of repeating energy or what is in consciousness that becomes reflected in the world around us. So we raise consciousness, we create a different reflection in the world around us, and less people have to suffer, and we start to have our awakening in a society as well as individually more smoothly and more positively than maybe what we would have otherwise. To eliminate the rough edges so we can have much more of a positive experience, and we can solve the world problems. We can start to work together as things collapse, to rebuild society on the strong foundation of love. So all this is coming to a head for a reason. It's for our collective awakening. So let's send a lot of love in that area. And thank you. And over here, let's post the whole November psychic forecast for you, where I have more details on Donald Trump and other predictions. And maybe over here about the solar storms that are happening. Love you. See you.